Hello, and welcome to the next installment of the AARPGs Playing with Myself. Hi, I'm Matt, your co-host, and today we're going to take a look at the most recent update to our Starfield mod, and possibly even answer the question, have we fixed the Outpost storage link problem forever? So what is the Outpost sort of container link problem? Okay, well, let's take a look at a few of these slides and let's see. All right, so when we're setting up an Outpost, often you will link storage containers together. So in this instance, I use a transfer container as my entry point for resources, but this could be just a starting resource storage container, or it could be from a container that's on a cargo link, right? So the idea is that you feed resources into your transfer container, that goes into your first box or your last box, it just kind of feeds its way through the chain, and that shouldn't be a problem, right? So, and for pretty much, if you set that up, that will work, right? That works just fine until you start mucking around a little bit. You can even manually take resources if you have a single connection between a transfer container and a single container, and you manually pull resources out of that. At least in the testing that I've done, that seems to be fine. You can put more resources in the transfer container and they will feed into your storage containers without a problem. The issue that appears, and I've watched multiple videos on this, is that when you begin linking your storage containers and then you manually draw from one of those containers, for whatever reason, that breaks the link between the storage containers. I'm not sure why that happens. I'm not sure what in the game code makes that happen. But yeah, so if it was to remove either from that middle container, or if I took resources manually out of that last container, anywhere in my chain, if I do that, it's going to break that feeding, not so much from the transfer container, but from box to box to box. So you're going to have basically a break in your system. The common workaround that I see in a lot of the videos that were posted is that you can fix that by deleting your link and then recreating the link, and that sort of resets it and it starts your flow of resources. The problem is that if you have to do that every time, it's really not a fix, it's a workaround. And that can be really time consuming, and it can also be very frustrating, I'm sure, for players who are like, why can't I get, why do I have to keep deleting and recreating these links between my storage containers? It is that kind of frustration that leads to what I can only assume part of why people don't really get into the Outposts. A majority of players, if it's kind of frustrating to manage your resources, it's one of the reasons I started working on this unique storage containers to improve and create an easy workflow. This is from my Steam awards, and this always blows my mind when I go down here. The award Shipping Magnate Connect 5 Outposts with Cargo Links. 2.8% of players have this achievement. And I unlocked this back in September of 2023, not too long after the game came out. I can't exactly remember when it came out. I've not really thought much of this. It was a fairly simple thing to set up. It was kind of interesting, but clearly people have stayed away from doing this, right? So it's not super popular. What is interesting is that this doesn't happen with the transfer container. So from that previous slide, if I have a transfer container and I have a single storage box and I take stuff out of that storage box and I go put it back into the transfer container, it's just going to feed right back into that first storage container. So this isn't happening with the storage container. So I decided to go into the creation kit and take kind of a deep dive to look at, what's going on in the transfer container. And the one thing that stood out to me was that there is a script assigned to it called the Outpost Container Script. You can kind of see that there at the bottom center of the screen. So I went ahead and opened that up to take a look at it in the script extender. Now, here's where I should caveat. I am not a programmer. I don't know how to use, can't write code, anything like that. But I have been lucky enough to work with some folks, some very talented programmers, and, they've kind of showed me stuff. So when I opened up the script extender and here's all this stuff, I don't really understand a lot of it. But what I did understand is that there are these 3 events that are listed. Event on load, event on unload, and event on workshop. And then there's the commands down below. Not understanding the code really as it is, but what I did understand is that this script was running and governing the transfer container when items are put in, when items are put out, and I guess also when something is connected directly to a workshop. I've actually never connected the transfer container directly to a workshop to feed it resources. That would be an interesting experiment. But so something is going on. This script is helping the transfer container manage cargo in and out without messing up. So I also went and took a look. There was notes in the script. And at first I was a little confused because I was like, well, how did my notes get under a script that I didn't write? Because as I began reading them, I was like, well, wait a minute. This is exactly what I was talking about in the earlier video. I think it's the first one in this series, where I describe why I created the unique containers is because here it says here, my concern is that cargo links might push too many resources and jam up your transfer container with light used resources. Remember, there's no need to have a massive fabrication process churning out gazillions of manufactured parts, a downside to some of Starfield's game systems. You just need an efficient way of manufacturing that's enough to always have the materials for building and creating mods. That's exactly what I was talking about in describing my goal. I'm like, well, did I put notes in here? And then I kept reading on. It says, I've left out directional arrows that would normally show the flow. And I realized, okay, these are not my notes. This was the developer's notes as they were making these scripts, building out these outpost concepts. And so it is an interesting insight into how the developers who are working on outposts saw the role of outposts. And they were not seen as massive manufacturing outposts to, push thousands and thousands of tons of material to, but something that's a little more boutique. And I don't, clearly that is not how many people approached the outpost system, who can create like these big, massive things. And maybe this is why, some of the systems don't work so good for building giant outposts because they weren't intended to. So after taking a look at the transfer container, I went back and opened up one of the unique storage containers. And I really hadn't changed anything else outside of the filtering and the naming for the unique cargo containers. And I noticed that there are no scripts that run, right, on these cargo containers. So it made me wonder, why couldn't storage containers act like a transfer container? So I went back into one of the unique storage containers. I think I'm showing beryllium, but I think I went into aluminum. And I went in and just hit the add script. That brings up kind of a little menu, and I scrolled down. It's just got all of them. It had outpost as a filter. I don't think I typed that. I don't know why the machine picked that, but it was good because I basically scrolled the mouse one time and I found this script called Outpost Container Script, and I clicked on that. That opens up this big window. I am not sure what information is supposed to be here, or what you're supposed to click on. I couldn't find anything, so I just hit cancel. when that comes up, and that brings it back down, and it shows that the script has actually been added to the cargo container. All right, let's take a look, an example of this problem. All right, here we are on a small outpost that I built to do some experiments. This is our transfer container. I've got 348 nickel resources currently in there. I also noticed that when you move close and far away, the icons go away. And so I've got an empty storage container. That's generic. It's not a unique container. And so I'm going to go ahead and I am going to connect the transfer container to this empty generic container. And so that should, resources are flowing. So now here we have the 348 nickel have flown from the transfer container to the storage container, right? So this is how this should work, right? So what I'm going to do here, just kind of like continuing my test, is I want to extract some of the materials from this storage container manually and see, does this break the link between the cargo box and the transfer container, right? So I've pulled out a few of the resources. I'm going to go back over to the transfer container, and I'm going to go ahead and re-interject those nickel resources back into the transfer container. All right. And then we're going to exit out of here and go back and check our container, and they are back in. So single storage container connected directly to a transfer container doesn't seem to break the link when you manually extract materials out of that storage container. So we've seen that it will continue to transfer from the transfer container to a single cargo container. So what I'm going to do next to demonstrate the issue that people have talked about is I'm going to build a second generic container and going to link that container to the first container. All right, so now both storage containers are linked. I add a brand new link, and the resources flow from the first container to the last container, right? This is expected behavior. So now I'm going to manually take all of those resources out of that last container. I am going to go back to the transfer container, and I'm going to put those resources back in, and we're going to see how they behave. All right. There are none. And they're in. So this seems to work, right? So from the transfer container, even though we've pulled something out from the final container, if we go back and we put that back into the transfer container, everything works great. So what we did is we pulled them out, and now I'm going to reintroduce them into the middle of the cargo container chain. And they're still there. All right, so the nickel did not move, right? The link between the two cargo containers is broken, right? So I'm going to show you the fix that most people have used in the past, right? You're going to bring up your outpost view. You can see the two are connected. You highlight the cargo link and delete it. And then you go back in and you recreate that link. And once you've recreated that link, the link is good between the two containers. All right, so we've seen where it doesn't work, right? So that is kind of the way the standard containers work. So I want to show you a setup I have here where I have a set of iron and a set of aluminum unique resource storage containers that have had the container script applied to them, right? So I'm going to go ahead and open up, show that these are all connected. So we've got links from the transfer container running to the first storage box, and then the first storage box connected to the next in the chain. So we're going to go up here to the transfer container, and we're going to go ahead and put in our test resources. We've got a few aluminum, and we've got a few iron that we're going to deposit into the transfer container. All right, so those resources have been pushed out of the transfer container. They are not over in the large container over here, and they did not go into the large container over there, which is good. I was a little worried I didn't check that. So let's go take a look at iron. There's nothing in the first box, and R3 iron in the final box. So this is just like what we saw with the behavior without the script, right? So this is very similar. The storage containers seem to be doing exactly what they should do. But I'm going to go ahead and take that aluminum out, and I'm going to re-interject it into this other storage container to see if I can break the link between them. So I go ahead and put that in there, and it's not there. And those resources have flown or flowed into the next storage unit. So I'm going to go ahead and try this again. We're going to show this with iron. We're going to go into the resource container, put those in midway through the chain. After manually taking them out, they're gone. And they have successfully flowed into the correct container. So this basically appears by adding the container script. This seems to fix the this breaking of links between storage containers when you're manually replacing them. Even if we go back later and we add more resources, that chain is still working, right? So the resources are still flowing from the transfer container into the boxes appropriately. So where can you get this mod? I've uploaded it to Bethesda's creations page, and I have also figured out how to upload it on the Nexus mod page as well. And what's in this update for the mod? You can see the list right here. But basically put storage containers in alphabetical order in the build menu. That was just a little quality of life update. I went in and I added some of the unique resources, like the gastronomic delight and the neurologic, because what I had found in my setup is that for a couple of the things I needed to manufacture, I had to put a generic container next to the assembly building to feed these sort of unique resources. So I went ahead and made small containers for them. I went ahead and added the medium unique resource containers for non-organic liquid resources, for gas resources, and for non-organic solid resources. So that means is that there's currently no medium unique resource storage containers for things like cosmetic, adhesive, stuff like that. I added the container script to all of the unique resource containers. And then we'd had a weird bug where someone wrote in and I tested it and it was also not working for me. Is for whatever reason, the unique storage containers would not link to the outgoing cargo container link box on those landing pads. And the way I fixed it, I'm not happy about the fix. I just went ahead and added every single resource keyword that I created for the container filters to that outgoing cargo container on the cargo link pad. And that seems to have fixed it. And it's because, again, not being a programmer, but it's because the keywords and the things that are assigned to the objects, they're not really like when I think keywords, I think of like an Oracle relational database. I think of like parent-child hierarchy data, where if something is considered a resource solid, and that's attached to that resource, that has kind of a parent hierarchy, so that if I have something that's like resource solid iron, well, yes, it is resource solid iron, but it also belongs to resource solid. And in the outgoing container filter, it has like everything solid, everything gas, everything liquid, everything manufactured. So it should accept everything. But I think what happens is when you add the additional constraint or the additional keyword of a very specific type of resource, it's almost like adding an and to the object. So it is solid and iron, right? And so my assumption is that the container with its filter doesn't have solid and iron, and so it's rejecting it, where it shouldn't do that. It shouldn't, I shouldn't have to go in and put in a gazillion keywords. It should understand that it could be iron, but it is also solid. So I don't know if that's right. I don't know if that's how the code's working, but I did test it. That seems to fix that so that you can link a unique resource container to the outgoing cargo container on the cargo link pad. As always, I have tried to test them. I've tried to be thorough, but please, if you are using this mod and one of the, something's not working, it's not connecting, you can't really do anything in the Bethesda webpage, but over on Nexus, they have the ability for folks to leave comments, or you could comment directly to this video. Well, thank you for tuning in and checking this out. I did want to sort of close the video with a few parting thoughts. And this might be what we call the controversial part of the video. I wanted to go back to that developer's remarks under the transfer container, right? Where it says there's no need to have a massive fabrication process, churning out gazillions of manufactured parts. So there are a lot of videos out there which will walk you through on how basically you can create these big manufacturing chains and then pull in resources. And then basically, you just create a million adaptive frames and you go from level 1 to level 100 in, a couple hours, and you make your base on a planet where 1 hour equals every 90 hours or something like that. There are a lot of ways. And so I don't want to take away from the enjoyment of folks who really like to sort of min-max or find a system and conquer a system, right? But there's been a lot of negative press and a lot of negative comments about Starfield, and there's a whole bunch of different reasons. But I would maybe say, that's great. Or you could play the game. You could not fast track. You could not sit and make adaptive frames, for 4 or 5 hours so that you can be level 100. And I think it's interesting, it's hard to capture my own experience with Starfield, which I have had a very enjoyable experience, even with some of the things that are wrong with it or not as good about it, that I can agree with some of the complaints. But overall, I've enjoyed the game. I've got quite a few hours in it. And interestingly, I recently saw a video. I know there's, I think, like an older one, but this is pretty recent. I saw a video that might actually have captured for me how I've been sort of struggling with my own, how do I express to people, I really like Starfield. And this was a video by someone named, forgive me, I'm left-handed. And I'll put a link in the description of the video. And it was an interesting little video I came upon. It's called, "Is Starfield a Cozy Game?" And at first I was kind of like, well, I don't know. I think this is, kind of interesting concept, but I would give it a watch, right? And I think it might soften some of the criticism for Starfield, or it might interest some people who might have thought, well, I don't want to play like a hardcore game. I don't want to have to do a lot of complicated stuff. I just want to enjoy myself. And I could say for my gameplay, where I primarily decided when I started this first gameplay that I wanted to explore the entire, galaxy that Bethesda built, that it is kind of like a cozy game. I can get on, I can go explore and scan some planets and, pick a few fights if I want to. But there's nothing sort of driving me that I have to do it. And I think in one of the previous games, videos, I knocked Starfield for not having a drive behind it, right? Sort of comparing it to some of the survival games I play. But maybe if I, even on myself, turn that around and look at it and go, oh, well, it doesn't need to have something to drive me to play it. I can just go on and I can go and do fighting all day long, or I can go take bounties and do spaceship combat for a couple hours, or I can go and try to build the biggest, most amazing manufacturing base that anyone's ever seen. I think that is one of the good things that Starfield does have, is it kind of allows you to explore the gameplay the way you want. So, all right, there's Randy's soapbox. So I hope that if you've made it to the end of this video, if you get a chance to try the mod, if it makes, using outposts, more enjoyable, that's great. I'd like to maybe check back in, 6 months and a year and see if it's still only 2.8% of the Starfield population is actually, sort of getting in deep with creating these sort of multi-planet, multi-system outposts. But until then, next time, enjoy the Starfield universe any way you like.